because music connects with the soul. It does evoke an emotional connection. And I remember when I reached out to you for this conversation, I sent you a text because I was starting to see this pattern and trend. A lot of people are losing jobs in the industry. They're leaving the industry. Some, I mean, particularly in the marketing field, CMOs. I know two CMOs specifically that have left, and they've done good things. And then I'm like, well, what's going on right now? Is it the lack of respect for the role of marketing within the vertical? Is there other opportunities? Is the industry shrinking? Is it financial? There's just a lot of change. There's a lot of uncertainty. And I'm always one who's just questioning, learning. What are you seeing when it comes to all of this change?
This is where this discussion started. Why this podcast, we decided to do this discussion, is that I also seen the same thing. People being displaced not by their own volition, in some cases being startled by the change in their lives, and trying to peel back the layers. And I think, unless you really get to know the entire picture, you may not have a single reason. But at the same time, as after we discussed, geez, what's going on, I started thinking about the people that have been in place for a very long time. I look
Mhm.
at some people at big organizations that have been in marketing positions for an extraordinarily long time and said, geez, what's the difference here? There's certainly differences in the organizations that they work for and the leadership that they have. But to a certain degree, there's also a difference in the people and their viewpoint on, and a theme that we both believe in thoroughly is continuous learning.
Yeah.
And not to point fingers or to say that a person continuously learned and they'll be secure forever, but I think they'll be more comfortable. And I think that's the takeaway from this whole thing, is that there are people that I know that don't spend one day without trying to learn something new about their role, their position, their life, whatever it may be. And to get caught off guard at a time like today with so many options available for learning, boy, it's a hard one for me to fathom. Not again to cast any aspersion on anybody who gets displaced, but I think the most important thing to do is make sure that if you get displaced, you have some options in your mind that you've pre-played just because.
Yeah.
It's never going to do you any harm.
No. And that idea of continuous learning, I know it's something that you invest a lot in, I invest a lot in, and that is both time and treasure, time and dollars. When we were writing Banking on Change and doing some research in the industry, one of the surprising things we found was that the majority of financial brand leaders, 70 to 80%, are spending or investing only 1 to 2 hours a week in ongoing learning. And if we get in and drill that down even further, out of that 70%, 80%, 50%, it's less than 1 hour per week. And in a time of continuous change and evolution and transformation, you look at some of the secondary research, and the numbers are leaders need to be investing a minimum of 5 hours, perhaps even upwards of 10 hours a week in continuous learning. What's your take on that when you think about just the lack of learning, to just cut to the chase? Why?
That it bothers me. Yeah, mind you, this is kind of like the way I was brought up. My mother was a teacher. My father was a salesperson that never settled for where he
Mm,
was at any point. And I think that helps a lot. But the reality is, my background. 15 years ago, I decided that at age 55, I did not want to become relevant and decided to start writing a blog about research in the marketplace that I could use to get in the door of people I was trying to sell, to make them smarter. I believe that that was one of the best decisions I ever made, but it wasn't out of the ordinary for what I was doing at the time. But what happened was, that's what was the beginning of writing reports for the digital bank report, writing articles for the financial brand, starting a podcast. Every one of those content creation moments, you have to learn in order to dispense and disperse information. You think about the number of hours you spend on your podcast, the number of hours I spend on my podcast. Yes, it's to share information, but doggone it, it's not that I know what I'm talking about.
Correct.
I tell people I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I try to surround my people with people that are smarter than me in whatever field they're in. And every time I do an interview, every time I write an article, every time I do a search with ChatGPT or Go Google, I'm learning something. I also found a great way to walk the dog rather than just have the mind wander, is putting on a doggone podcast and listening to it. It it's sometimes not even in my field. One of my favorite podcasts is certainly Gary Vaynerchuk, because I really believe in the way he looks at life, he looks at business, he looks at content. So, and there's never a time that I don't come home and say, I got to write a note to myself. I need to implement this. I got to double down on this, because you inherently get lazy at things that get easier. And it's good to have somebody that keeps on pushing you along. And there are so many, and this is where this whole discussion started with you and I, is it's not just about these formal learning experiences. Nobody has to start a podcast or start writing, but there are so many options to learn, to be an absorber of information. It doesn't matter if you get up 1 hour earlier or take one more mile on that dog walk. It doesn't have to go to waste. We have the time, even though time is the most precious resource. We can reallocate or double down.